Welcome back to the Empowered to Lead podcast, where we are talking to mental health therapists who have started and grown and sustained a group practice, primarily in Canada. I'm so glad that you have joined us again today. And what is today? What are we going to be talking about today? We are talking about quarterly meetings. We are in the middle of the fourth quarter. We're in for the home run stage. If you're watching the Blue Jays this week, I am not the best baseball fan, so some of those references might not actually land for you, but we are in the final quarter of 2025 as I am recording this episode. I think that this episode is applicable all year long, but has particular significance right now as we're in November and kind of wrapping up a year, looking at vision, looking back at the last year. How did we do? What do we want to do in the coming year? And really just touching base on our businesses. And one of the key ways that we can do that, at least that I think that we can do that, is by having quarterly meetings. And I hear you roll your eyes. I hear objections to this all the time, because when I talk about quarterly meetings, I'm not talking about a team meeting. I'm talking about meeting with each of your team members on an individual basis on a quarterly time frame. And that sounds like a lot, especially if you have a larger group. And yet, I believe there's so many important factors involved in doing a quarterly meeting. So you might say it takes too much time. Lisa, you don't know how much I have on my plate. I'm seeing clients. I've got kids at home. I'm running a business and it's growing. I've got these issues with admin. And maybe there's some on my team I actually don't want to meet with because I'm either scared of them or I'm scared of what they're going to tell me. Or it's really awkward. They aren't the most warm people. You might say they don't want to meet with me. They're contractors. They don't want to take their time away from their schedule. It's really hard to make those happen. You might say, what do we talk about? I don't like talking to my team. I like to come in, run my business, and go. So I don't even know what we're going to talk about. You might say meetings are a waste of time. I can use my time better. I can share the vision. I can do these things through a Loom or in a team meeting. And I'm hoping by the end of this that you might at least agree a little bit with me on the importance of these meetings. So quarterly meetings are something that I have done ever since I started my group practice. I am all about connection. Quality time is my love language. And so you spend time with me and I feel loved. And so that has translated into this being a priority. And what I also noticed is that if I wasn't meeting with my team on a quarterly basis, we were losing touch. We weren't having some of those conversations about where's the business going? Why are you doing this? What's client retention look like? How are you actually doing? Kind of thing. And then I read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, and he confirmed everything that I believed. One of the things that really stuck out for me in that book is that he talked about when he is working with small business owners and tells them that they need to meet with their team on a quarterly basis, almost all of them will say, I don't have time for that. And then they would come back to him for the next coaching session and they're like, we've lost engagement. People aren't seeming like they're enjoying being here as much anymore. And he would go, right, that's why I told you to have the quarterly meetings. So I think probably I'd have to go back and listen again to the book. He was kind of generalizing and casting vision on a team basis. But as you look at it, and actually now as I even say that, there are parts in there that he talks about needing to do this on an individual basis. So why? Why do you want to have quarterly meetings? Why do you want to add more to your plate and take up more of your time in your contractor? So let's go back to some of those objections. It takes too much time. Yes, it does take a lot of time. I set aside 45 minutes to an hour for each of my clinicians. And I have found that if I set aside a half an hour, we will always go 45 minutes. If I set aside 45 minutes, that's about a good amount of time. Some of them will want to meet longer. When you build this in as part of your culture, they look forward to it. And so they set that time aside. So when you're saying they don't want to meet with me, some of them are not going to want to meet with you, or they're going to take forever to book that spot that you said, hey, I want to get together with you. So most of us have contractors. You don't have to make them join you, and yet they're going to be missing out. So create some FOMO for them. Have some really good meetings with the rest of your team, and then they can say, well, why didn't you meet with her or him? It was so good for me to hear what's going on and to be heard. What do we talk about? You want to be very intentional about these meetings. And I may contradict myself a little bit even in there. Intentionality always. Sometimes an agenda, and sometimes you let it flow. So picking and choosing. What I ended up doing is one meeting would be an agenda. I'm saying what we're talking about, and another one would be, hey, I just want to connect. And so 2 quarters of the year, we're being very purposeful about what I want to communicate. And then the other 2 quarters are just relationship building. And so important. So I'm going to come back to what do we talk about, being intentional about that. Meetings are a waste of time. So you want to make sure that this is not a waste of time. If you think as a group practice owner, you start to trade clients, clinical clients for therapists. So in other words, the time and the energy that you used to put into preparing for and sitting with clients is now preparing for and sitting with therapists. It's not a waste of time. If your therapists are the ones who are seeing clients and they have a quarterly meeting with you where they feel seen, heard, revitalized, encouraged, then they're going to do excellent work with those clients that you don't have to see anymore. And so that's also the purpose of these meetings. What does it look like? So let's talk about the purpose of a quarterly meeting. The purpose of a quarterly meeting is to build rapport, is to provide open feedback, and according to Gino Wickman, is to make course corrections in an unstructured one-on-one setting. I would argue a little bit. You want to have some structure in there for at least a couple of your meetings, like I just said. But really, rapport, provide a space for feedback to be given, both for you to give feedback to the therapist and for them to give feedback to you. What does that look like when we're looking about what are we talking about in these meetings that fulfills this purpose? So build rapport. I start those meetings with, how are you doing? What's going on? What happened with this situation? Be curious about where they're at in their other job and the family things, that relational side of things, to set that tone, to kind of bring them down, relax them a little bit, providing feedback. So the next thing on my agenda, whether it's written or in my head, is I'm going to praise them. This is something that I struggle with. That is not my love language. Words of affirmation do not come naturally to me. So I look back, what kind of feedback have we gotten from our clients? What is my admin team saying about this person? What does their client retention look like? How can I praise them? where are things that I can provide feedback on that they're doing well? And also, do we want to see some change? So I wouldn't start with where do we want to see some change, but that's part of my feedback. I'm always asking for feedback from them. How's it working with our admin team? Are you getting the kind of clients that you want? What are you looking for that we're not providing already? And I'm not going to say yes to everything, but I want to know what your experience is like here in my group practice. I want to be able to have the opportunity to talk about things that are going well and things that maybe need a little bit of shift. So this provides that opportunity. Having your metrics, showing them what their client retention looks like, what their notes situation looks like, some of the things that you are measuring within your group practice and sharing that with them. Not in a, hey, you've been bad and you need to do better kind of way, but how do we work together to reach these goals that the business has, that you have, and how do we move forward? So that's also part of it, is goal setting. I used to call them like the rocks, the sand, and I'm forgetting the other term, but really like, what are the goals that you have for the next quarter? Because one of our values is growth mindset. So are you taking training? Are you looking to grow within here? Are you looking to grow somewhere else? Is something changing in another work environment? Really being curious about that side of things. How often does it happen? We've talked about quarterly basis. I would say maybe if you really don't feel like you have time or you have a really large team, maybe you do it twice a year, but that's not something I would totally recommend because I am the proponent for quarterly meetings. And you want to do this at least 45 minutes long. Ideally, an hour is set aside for you to have this conversation. You want it to be casual and warm, connecting. You want to talk about their role in your group practice, how that's going. We've talked about some of that stuff. What is the goal of these conversations? So the goal is to improve communication. The goal is to strengthen your bond. And it's also to encourage engagement. A lot of us talk about it's so hard when my therapist builds up their caseload and then leaves. This is something that helps you have a finger on what's happening with your therapist, to have a conversation about where they're wanting to head. So maybe you won't be blindsided when they do decide to leave. And maybe there's also, I don't get this kind of support. I don't get to have this kind of feedback if I'm on my own. I don't have a cheerleader in my corner if I'm doing this on my own. One thing that I would say, while I am a huge proponent for quarterly meetings and keeping the communication lines open, they're going to tell you what they want to tell you. And that's their prerogative. You're also going to tell them what you want to tell them, and that's not everything. I had somebody that was one of those shooting stars. She was going places. She did everything I told her to do, built up such a great caseload. And we had a team meeting, our quarterly meeting, and we talked about where are you headed. And she told me that she was all in, and then 6 weeks later gave me her notice that she was leaving and taking all of those clients. And so you might say, okay, so Lisa, see, so it doesn't do what you said it did. I'm telling you that because this doesn't solve everything for you. It doesn't protect you against everything. One of the things that I hear quite often is, I'm going to put in all of these protective measures so that people will stay with me forever. And I can say I've got this great client or therapist retention. You can't protect against everything. So this, doing a quarterly meeting, helps protect against some of those things. It helps to have some of that information. I've also had people sit in that quarterly meeting and tell me, I actually am going to wanted to wait for this meeting to let you know that I'm going to be moving on. So it has both effects. But if you have those rock stars, those people who buy into your culture, who are doing the good work, they are somebody who loves that admin time, these quarterly meetings really feed into them in a different way than a shooting star. And still, for both types of client therapists, I keep mixing up that word because they are my clients. It has benefit whether you get sideswiped or not. It shows your integrity. It shows your commitment to this team. It shows consistency across your team members and protects in a lot of ways. Not every single way, but it does protect. It provides you as a CEO the opportunity to hear questions and concerns. So sometimes that can be hard if you get an email or you get a side conversation in the hallway to say, hey, I'm not happy with how this has happened. But if you have intentional time and they know that that's coming up each quarter, and they will be heard in that time, it provides a safe place for both of you to hear and share concerns and questions. It allows you as a CEO, as a group practice owner, to cast the vision. Where is the business going? What are we trying to accomplish? Why are we making some of these changes? Who are we adding to the team or looking for? What does the next quarter look like for this group practice? And creates that buy-in. It allows you to share. It allows you to articulate and to get a pulse on how your team feels about some of those things. It allows you, again, review the metrics and the measurements. I think that this is one of the key things that a lot of us leave. We feel like they're contractors, so I can't be asking too much of them. I can't ask them to do all of these things. And yet, if we don't, are we inspiring them? Are we encouraging them? Are we saying, I see you and who you are as a therapist? This is where you're doing awesome. You've got clients sticking around for 15 sessions on average, and look at how that compares to our group practice on as a whole. Or the opposite, to say, hey, we've noticed that you're only keeping clients for 1 or 2 sessions, and our average is 8. Let's talk about that. So it's not just, I think you're not doing this, or it feels like maybe things aren't going so great. You have numbers, you've got the metrics, you've got things that you're measuring, and having a clear conversation with them about how to make changes for that. What does it do for your team member? It provides them access to you. So I'm also going to pause there for a minute. I think that you as the owner should be meeting with each of your team members on a quarterly basis. I know, I've already said that. But if you are growing and you've got a larger group practice, maybe it's time to think about having a team lead or a clinical director, somebody else who can either help you make these meetings happen or take that over. So keep that in mind. It doesn't have to be you if you've got 12 plus therapists. Find somebody to step into that role for you. So then if you're in that position, you'll be having these quarterly meetings with your team leads, with your administration, and your role shifts again about who you're responsible to and for. Your team member, it also provides them with opportunities to ask questions that they wouldn't ask in a team meeting. Maybe they wouldn't ask in the hallway, and yet this is something that is coming up. It's because I've been doing this for so long, the last quarterly meeting that I had, I sent out a little agenda, and 3 or 4 of my team came back and said, And here's my questions. I was waiting for our meeting. And so can we talk about these things? Yes, we can. Let's make your questions a priority. And also let's make sure we make time so that I can cast my vision. They can share their vision and goals. What are they wanting to do? They can, ask you where opportunities are. This is the space where my team asked about doing a workshop or creating a free resource kind of thing. And so it provides that environment, easy access for that. And then they feel seen and heard and valued. And who doesn't like that? Especially when you're working somewhere that one of the reasons why people join us is so that they are connected and not just doing this on their own. So let's go back and kind of reiterate what are some of the things that you're going to talk about. You're going to ask them how they are, what's going on with them. You're going to have a personal element on this. You are going to ask them what their vision and goals are. Where are they wanting to go in the next quarter, in the next year? You're going to use some of your metrics and your measurements, what you are looking at to say, hey, you're doing awesome in this. This is what the group practice is doing. And if there are concerns, to have a space to have that conversation. You're going to share about changes that are coming up. So these are some exciting changes. These are some challenges that we're facing. You're also going to share some decisions that you've made. I was just meeting with somebody before this episode recording, and she's going to cut back all the treats in the office. And so if she was having a quarterly meeting, she can have that conversation especially with the therapist who is like, my clients love all those treats, or they're the first person to say, this isn't working for me. Here's a concentrated time for us to meet and to hear each other's vision, challenges, concerns, celebrations, kind of thing. This is also an opportunity for you to share feedback that you've received from other people on the team, whether it's admin or clients, to say, hey, I heard this about how you handled this situation. Thank you so much for doing that, kind of thing. Have I sold you on it yet? I hope so. How does this happen? That would be the last thing maybe to consider as part of all of this. I typically have done it in my office. I prefer to do it in person. I try to do it off-site because everybody's busy, and quite typically they try to schedule these meetings based on their schedule in the office. That just seemed to make most sense. Sometimes I will offer to buy a Starbucks if I've got time to run out, or I'll make sure that they have a beverage. Really keeping it casual. And so you might choose to do that off-site because you want to have one of those casual meetings and just kind of having it be more warmth and personable. You want to do it face-to-face, so it might be virtual. Don't do it over the phone. You can't see their facial responses. You can't read what's going on body language-wise. And so my suggestion, based on my experience, the first choice would be in office, in person. The second choice would be online over Zoom or Teams or whatever it is that you use. The third option would be in a coffee shop or someplace like that. I don't do it by phone. I would love to hear from you. Do you do quarterly meetings? What are some of the things that you love about it? What are some of the things that maybe you've struggled with? What are your thoughts on having quarterly meetings with each of your team members? You can email me at lisa@grouppracticenetwork.ca. And also, I just want to put in a little extra plug for Group Practice Connection. That's as a membership where we meet regularly. We have chats over Voxer in between our meetings. There's resources for these quarterly meetings that are in there that I've created for you to build a sustainable business that works for you, but also to have connection, to have some of these questions thrown out. Hey, in my quarterly meeting, this happened. How would you handle that? Or as I prepare for my quarterly meeting, what are some of the questions that you guys are asking? I would love to have you join us in there. But first of all, and easiest of all, send me an email, lisa@grouppracticenetwork.ca, and let me know your experience with quarterly meetings. Thanks for tuning in. I hope that you'll come back again next week. We're going to be hearing from another group practice owner and their experience of this adventure. Have a great day. Thanks for hanging out with me on Empowered to Lead, the Therapist Practice. If you're ready for deeper support, I'd love to see you inside the Group Practice Connection, my monthly membership where Canadian therapists like you get coaching, community, and the tools to build a business that actually supports your life. You can check it out at grouppracticenetwork.ca. We're building something great here, and I'm so glad you're a part of it.
This is Michelle Abraham, and we are honored to have Lisa Catallo's Empowered to Lead podcast on our High Vibe Podcast Network. For more shows like hers and to grab your free gift from the gift fold, head on over to highvibepodcastnetwork.com.